Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm delighted to see such a good group of people here to get information on the ballot issues that are coming up on April the 8th. It's always good to have citizen participation and to understand what goes on in our city. So we're going to talk about these four ballot issues, and let me get this straight to you up front, that these are four proposals that will increase the tax revenue for the city of Clayton. But before we talk about them, let's take a step back and talk about how we got to this point. After all, we're a good city, we're a solid financial city, but things have happened that have changed that over the past few years. Starting in 2010, 11, 12, and 13, the city has run a deficit of approximately $2.5 million a year. Now, how did that happen? Well, let's go back in time just a little bit to 2008 and 2009 when the economy imploded. Some people call it a recession, I call it a depression. Well, in 2008 and 2009, the real estate bubble busted. The value of real estate literally across our region, across the country, declined precipitously. And when that happened, the property owners in Clayton, mostly commercial, but certainly residential as well, went to the county assessor's office and had their property reappraised based on the value that it was after that real estate bubble busted. You may not know this, but the property tax bill that you pay as a resident is contains about 10% revenue to the city of Clayton, 10%. Now, while that's a small percentage of the total bill that you pay, it's a lot of money for the city of Clayton. So when you combine all the property taxes that are paid, and they were paid at a lower rate because of the reassessment, it took a lot of money out of our revenue stream. That was number one. Number two was that as a very healthy city, we had a large reserve, a good reserve, and we also had funds for the replacement of vehicles, capital improvements, different sinking funds that we could tap when it was necessary to replace a fire engine or an ambulance or police cars. Well, the money that we were earning on that money that was in the bank amounted to about $1 million a year. And of course, when the real estate bubble busted, the banks imploded as well, and the interest rates dropped almost to zero. So the interest that we were getting at $1 million a year went to almost nothing. I believe we're earning less than 1/4% now on the money that we have in the bank. And of course, that amount is less because we drew on reserves to cover the deficit over the past few years. And number three was we had a decline in our sales tax revenue. People who came to work weren't buying lunch anymore, if they even had a job to come to work for. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, all the things that people normally do during the day that created sales tax revenue for us, that declined as well. So between those three, we ended up with a deficit that ranged to about $2.5 million a year. So what could we do about that? If you're a business, if you're a privately held business and you are astute about the economy, there are things that you can do immediately in your business to help stem the flow of red ink. You can mothball equipment, you can close plants, you can eliminate participation in 401k programs, you can eliminate overhead. It's a whole toolbox of things you can do as a business person to help your business survive. But it's different in a municipality. We can't just take the fire engine out of service, we can't just mothball our ambulance, and we can't take a dozen police cars out of service. When you call and you need an ambulance, you want it to be at your house. And right now, that response time in the entire city of Clayton is an average of 4 minutes and 20 seconds to get to your house after you make that call. I don't think that's something we want to change. So the city manager created a program which was approved by the Board of Aldermen that was a 3-year program to eliminate the deficit. I came in the middle of that, and I fully support what has been done and what is proposed to be done to finish up on that 3-year program. The city manager created an early retirement program for employees that could, by option, take their retirement a little earlier than they anticipated. 19 employees took us up on that retirement program. All of them senior employees ranging in 35 to 42 years of service to the city of Clayton. Now, some of those positions we had to refill, but if you recognize that new employees come in at a much lower rate than those employees who had retired, between those who have left and the new employees coming in at a lower rate, we saved over $1 million against our deficit spending. So between the early retirement program, other cost-saving devices that were put into place, this year, 2014, we're anticipating a deficit of about $1 million. So when I and the Board of Aldermen saw those figures, we said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's see what else we can do that we can eliminate, that will not be felt, that will not harm the culture that we have here in Clayton. We spent the summer going through the budget book, and believe me, that is not a fun experience. But we looked and we discussed, and literally we cussed and discussed this over and over again to try to find where we would cut. But there's an old adage in business that says, you cannot cut your way to prosperity. And we had cut things down to the bone of where we felt we could not cut anymore. So the question became, where do we get revenue? There's only 2 ways to get revenue. You either get more from the people that you're doing business with, or you find new customers. Well, we would love to find some new customers, and one of the things that we have been spending a lot of time on is cultivating relationships with developers and encouraging them to build high-rise, high-density apartment buildings in the downtown Clayton area. Target marketed to young adults who would either get on Metro and go downtown to go to work or walk to work in Clayton. These are the people who, when they come home from work, they're not going to go up to their apartment and watch Iron Chef all night. They're going to be on the street having dinner, visiting our shops, spending money in the downtown Clayton area, and that's the ultimate goal of what we're looking for. But we can't base our budget on a hope and a wish. We have to base our budget on reality. And the reality is that we need to increase our revenue. So we looked at every possible option. And when it all boiled down to it, we decided the best option was to ask permission from the citizens of Clayton to have people who come in every day to visit us to pay an extra half-cent tax when they spend their money in Clayton. A half cent on a $50 dinner would be 25 cents more on the bill. In reality, the dollars that would make that up for 2 1/4-cent sales taxes gets us to $1 million in revenue, and that's what we need to close the budget. The reverse of that would be, that is, if these 2 1/4-cent sales taxes do not pass, we are going to have to figure out where to cut more. Do we want to reduce our EMT service? I don't think we do. Do we want to reduce all the efforts that we make in bringing people into Clayton to enjoy themselves, to spend money at our restaurateurs and retailers? Things like the art fair, Shakespeare in the Street, which is coming up in the fall, a farmer's market that we're moving onto Clayton, onto Central Avenue. All these events and many more cost us a lot of money, but they're supportive of our business district. They help to develop sales tax, and we become a destination place. So that's the reason why we have those 2 1/4-cent sales taxes, to produce the revenue, to close our deficit gap, and to help us maintain the services that all of you and all of the citizens in Clayton are used to having. Well, in addition to the 2 1/4 cent sales taxes, we have 2 bond issues. In 1993, the board approved a bond issue to repave about 50% of the neighborhood streets in Clayton. That bond issue was paid off in 2013. Despite a very aggressive scientific repaving schedule, maintenance schedule, we cannot extend the life of asphalt streets because of our freeze-thaw climate beyond 20 years. But we do a great job in keeping it going for 20 years. Those same streets that were repaved 20 years ago will be repaved again if this bond issue passes. That is a $15 million bond issue that will cost the owner of a $500,000 home about $12 a month. And it will be a 20-year bond that will go away just like the last one. It was paid off. That's the same thing that would happen to this $15 million bond issue. In addition to repaving about half the streets, there is also going to be an upgrade to street lights in some areas, and also some alleys will get repaved as part of a cycle. The last issue, also a bond issue, has to do with the skating rink and support building in Shaw Park. Well, how did this come about? Well, as I mentioned, we spent a lot of time over the summer going through the budget. And something came up about the maintenance costs in Shaw Park that we were kind of scratching our heads about, and it turned out that we have spent almost $400,000 in the past 3 years alone on repair of the Shaw Park skating rink. Now, folks, this skating rink and the support building will be celebrating their 53rd birthday in 2014. Now, I'd like to be 53 years old again, but that's a whole different story. The skating rink and the building have been deteriorating over a long period of time. Even with the money that we put into it, it doesn't operate as it should. Let's go back to 2007. The skating rink did not open in 2007. I don't remember if many of you remember that. But it did not open because there were equipment problems. And the board at that time convened a group called the Ice Skating Rink Task Force and got citizen input and surveys done regarding the future of the skating rink. Well, one of the things the task force did was they put a survey out to the community and said, we are not sure if we should reopen this skating rink. What is your opinion? Would you like to see the skating rink reopened or not? And the second question was, would you like to see the skating rink taken down and turned into grass, into just green space? Well, the first question came back with a resounding 67% of the people said, the skating rink is part of our community, just like Millennium Park in Chicago and Central Park in New York. It's part of the culture. For 53 years, we've had Clayton residents, children who've grown up, who have skated at that rink, and it's part of our community. We want to keep it. And the second question about should we just eliminate it, turn it back to green space, only 4% of the respondents said we should put it back into green space. So that was a pretty resounding response to those questions. So the city spent the money in 2007 and got the equipment going and started the ice season again the next year. Well, folks, the equipment is still old no matter what you do, and the skating rinks that were built in the same area, in the same era around the country, have pretty much all disappeared. And believe it or not, there's a repository somewhere for all that equipment. So when our equipment goes out, we call somebody and say, do you have this certain part? And if they've got it, it's great. We buy it from them. And if they don't, which is becoming increasingly more common, we actually have to have the part custom made. And there is where the problem comes in. We have spent almost $400,000 in the past 3 years to keep the skating rink going. And yet, if you've been to the skating rink this past season, if it's 32 degrees or warmer and the sun is shining, we cannot make ice on the north end of the rink. If you've been out there, there's cones that divide up the north part, and we can't even use that part during the year. So the board and I had to make a decision. We had 3 choices. Do we continue to throw money at this project, at this skating rink? Do we let it go? What else do we do? Well, to answer the first question, do we just say goodbye to skating in Clayton? Do we end a 53-year history of skating in Shaw Park in downtown Clayton? Well, the survey was a resounding no, we shouldn't do that. So we thought that was probably not the right thing to do. The second choice is we could completely tear the rink apart, chop up all the concrete, repipe the entire rink, take all of the equipment out of the back, and replace all that equipment with a new technology. You know, when that equipment originally went in that building, we hadn't even walked on the moon yet. There were no fax machines, much less internet or personal computers. The technology has changed dramatically, and the equipment that is being used now is way different than what's in that building. But if we do that, it's going to cost several $1,000,000 to go through a complete renovation, and we took a step back and said, you know, if we do that, we're still going to end up with a facility that we can only use 3 months out of the year. So the third option was create a new iconic facility for the next 50 years of Clayton. Create a facility that not only would be used for skating, but could be used for other field sports, soccer practices, lacrosse, other sporting events, as well as cultural events, such as symphonic music, bringing the high school band in, bringing in other venues that would use this facility to the benefit of the citizens of Clayton. So the Ice Rink Task Force worked on this project actually from 2007. They came up with a whole list of things that the city would like to see in a facility like that. And the project went to Jacobs Engineering. It's a world-renowned engineering firm that's located here in St. Louis. And they came up with this project, which is a covered surface. It's a shell made of steel and tempered glass that will protect the surface in bad weather, but it is open on all sides so that you continue to get the experience of skating under the stars or playing field sports or having other cultural events in the outdoors, but yet it is protected from the weather. In addition, the building that's behind the skating rink now would come down, and a new one-story building would be placed between the rink and the tennis courts. Now, if you bear with me for just 1 second, you would see that we're actually going to shift the direction of the rink. Instead of going from north and south, it would go east and west and face Brentwood Boulevard. So then between the new multi-purpose facility and the tennis courts would be a building that would serve as lockers, support facility, snack bar, lots of things that would service both that multi-purpose facility and the tennis courts. So that's the proposal that we have out there. If this does not pass, the board at some point is going to have to make some decisions about the facility, but we've been told by Jacobs Engineering that the life expectancy is quickly drawing to a close. I would hate for us to be the ones to take 53 years worth of cultural history out of Clayton. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the 4 items. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything you would like. I definitely appreciate you all being here today. Thank you.